has ears to hear, let him hear. This is America's Man's Man, and I want to show you why love for Lynnfield is founded on a bad premise. See, I mean, I get the intentions, but they're severely misguided. And basically, what's the premise? The premise is, well, the way to maintain a safe space, because that's what leftists tend to want, especially the bureaucratic types that would dump a strip mall on Lynnfield and do that sort of silly thing, take the quick cash instead of thinking in the best interest of the residents. Love for Lynnfield is a bad, it's founded on a bad premise, and that is that you can love the terrorists to death, right? The people who are throwing Molotov cocktails at police and just wreaking havoc and wreaking in general. So, and here's how I know that this strategy will fail, right? Because you had, let's take Center Congregational Church, for instance, or Lynnfield Center. Center Congregational Church in the center of Lynnfield. They tried to love on the homosexuals, like a lot of denominations like them. Why? Out of fear, not because it's what the gospel says. In fact, if you ask them who Jesus is, they'd say, well, he was a nice man, but they don't care who Jesus is anymore. It's a social club, and because of this, it has zero integrity whatsoever. Because of this, again, there are natural laws of the universe, and when you adopt an anything goes kind of attitude, that's when the flood comes, and you're not prepared. You're like Noah, who maybe didn't build the ark, and you drown. And that's that's the drowning mentality of Lynnfield for love. You think that by loving the terrorists, I'm going to tell you what I mean about Center Congregational Church. Center Congregational Church adopted an attitude toward homosexuality that's of the world. It's not of Jesus Christ. And coincidentally, it's a drowning church. You might have a leftist kind of rally for support now and again, but spiritually, it's dead. So what's the solution here? Like, what do you do? Well, you really need someone who will adopt a no-nonsense attitude toward first of all, vandalism, because you fight off vandalism. That's the Antifa Mama's Boy, or Obama's Boy, as I like to call it. I know that's a real popular sentiment in Lynnfield. But seriously, you fend off vandalism, you clean it up, check out the broken windows theory, and take a no-nonsense stance on all rioting, all violence, and really all vitriolic, unconstitutional kinds of protests. You definitely want to deter that kind of thing, and that's because it's always the terrorists, the domestic would be domestic terrorists, people who are maybe thinking, well, gee, do I really want to make a career of throwing bricks at buildings? And actually, most of them are paid protesters by deep-pocketed people who are, they're not locals. They kind of bust them around the country, and they just start wars in neighborhoods like Lynnfield. And the whole love for Lynnfield thing is not a long-term strategy. We already have a strip mall, and if it keeps going like this, you're gonna have a totally ghettified strip mall, and they're gonna start moving into your house. So eventually, you're not going to be able to look outside your window without someone, without hearing gunshots. And that's just not the Lynnfield that I know and love, and I don't think it's the Lynnfield that you know and love either. So, to some, we saw this in not just the Center Congregational Church, but churches across the country. The church in general is dying for this very reason, because we let the world dictate our agenda rather than letting Christ, the Christ within us, the natural law within us, which God gave us in our DNA, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal, setting the agenda as it should. And because of that, because of this fear of this largely media instigated fear we as a church gave into the country, and churches are dying. There's nobody wants to go to church anymore because even the world can see that the church has no integrity, that we've kowtowed, we've bowed to the ways of the world as a church, and so nobody trusts us. And when I say us, I mean the collective church. And I say this as really kind of an observer from the inside who's making a difference. Bottom line, you cannot love the Sodomites to death. I mean, think about loving the Sodomites to death, really. You cannot love these will-be domestic terrorists to death. The only way you can stop rioting, danger, domestic terrorism, fires, shootings, lootings, police, and don't think it can't happen in Lynnfield, you cannot love the terrorists to death. Because they have an agenda, and it's against you. It's against all Americans. And the first way you can start fighting them is really to clean up any vandalism as soon as it appears, as fast as we can. And if you want my help, just reach out to me. You got my number, if you know what I mean. So, well, if you don't. I'm sure you'll be able to find some. The selectmen have my number. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful day. Remember, don't try to love a sodomite or a terrorist to death. And with all the love in the world, this is America's man's man.